If you're really into high fidelity audio, does that make you an audiophile? That's actually kind of debatable. Years ago, I would have said, sure, that's pretty much the meaning of that word. Audiophile means person who's super into audio fidelity. But over the years, I've come to see that there's some subtlety to that, and largely that's come from my experience in forums and different places like that, certain Reddit threads where self purported audiophiles weigh in on conversations, and you very quickly, and you're someone like me, start to think of yourself as maybe I'm just an audio enthusiast because I don't take certain things that those people talk about anywhere near as seriously as they do. Even if on paper, a lot of what seem to be the definitions of an audiophile are true for me, like guy who has spent a lot more money than the average person over the years on audio equipment, sometimes buying headphones or speakers at a price tag that people he knows thinks he's crazy. Check. Guy who spends a lot more time listening to music than some of the people he knows and obsesses over how good it sounds and the emotional kind of reaction that you have to that than other people he knows. Check. Sure, but just remember, depending on where you go on the internet for advice, audiophiles are also the people saying, oh, you're using a cord that isn't 60% silver and 40% adamantium? Oh, you're like missing out on the whole snake oil salesmanship. These people are convinced that if you don't have this $3,000 headphone amp and you don't have cables made of some rare metal, that it doesn't work. You can take it too far. You can even shame people. There's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of haughtiness in some of those crowds where, like, anybody who doesn't know all of the fancy terminology, anybody who doesn't have all of the fancy gear, not even worth listening to, dismiss everything they say. That can get crazy and mean-spirited, really. And at the end of it, this is a hobby that's about something that's supposed to be fun. Music is fun. Music is emotional. Music is supposed to bring us joy. It's a hobby that you would think you could share with other people and collectively have some joy about it instead of all of this judgment. And when you get too far into it, you get comments like this one to videos where if you don't mention a certain word, you can talk at length about headphones, like the width of the instrumentation is really surprising for this style of headphone. There's really good instrument separation. It's a very distinct, like a guitar and drums, instead of it just blurring into a wall of sound that washes over you. That might be, for a lot of people, a pretty good summary of how headphones sound. But if you don't use a magical word that is a buzzword, then somebody dismisses everything you've said as you don't know what you're talking about. When I would counter that in saying, I work in copywriting professionally. You know, one of the things that works really well when you do it, don't saturate your content with buzzwords that only some random industry insider really understands what it is. Or even if you think it's a word that appeals to the general public or that they would understand it, don't lean on it. Don't be in a situation where the only way you can talk about that topic is to just keep tapping the buzzword button, or you just sound like somebody who doesn't actually know what they're talking about, and you're just saying words to sound smart. And then ironically, if you try to address that and you don't use all of those words, somebody will use that as the reason you don't know what you're talking about and still dismiss you. This is how silly that this whole hobby can become sometimes because of this kind of thinking. And so it's not to besmirch audiophiles in general. There's plenty of them that are great that you can learn a lot from, but it is a reason that I'm hesitant to throw that word around sometimes, just because, like I said, in forums and certain places of the internet, people that refer to themselves that way end up going way off the deep end with this hobby, caring more about spec reports or some anecdotal study than trusting these right here. At the end of the day, that's really all that matters. Somebody could tell me that these headphones are no good because of some benchmark that somebody did and some wave graph proves that they're terrible. But if at the end of the day I put them on and think they're some of the best headphones, the most enjoyable headphones that I've ever worn to listen to, screw all that. Who cares? You don't need the validation of some report or some person telling you that the headphones are okay. Quick little anecdote I had shared in the other video is when I first got these Denon AHD 5000s, I was wowed by them, and at that time wasn't even using them with a headphone amp, still wowed by them. Then I got deep into some forum reading just to educate myself with some stuff, and people were talking on and on about headphones are garbage without a headphone amp, and anybody that calls themselves an audiophile or an enthusiast in the hobby that doesn't have one is a joke, and they shouldn't even own headphones like that. Suddenly I started doubting these. I started being like, oh man, you know, like maybe they're not as good as I thought or whatever. And then it hit me at some point later, like, isn't it weird that these are headphones that 5 seconds ago I thought were awesome, but then somebody else told me that there's no way they could sound good unless I have gear that I don't have. And now I like don't enjoy them the same. This is silly. I'm allowing way too much outside influence to play a part in what I feel about them. Now, yeah, I do have a headphone amp now for them, but only because you obey your budget and at the pace that you can do this stuff, not what some other dude gives you permission to do or not. And so, even when I title videos like I did with the AirPods Max, them against audiophile headphones, that's not me calling myself an audiophile. That's me saying, here are headphones that in the audio community, people often refer to as headphones that an audiophile would buy. It's an easy way to identify them, to talk about them in a way that people would get it. It doesn't mean that I'm saying that I'm the greatest expert ever, or that you should listen to me because I'm some audio engineer with 30 years of studies and I have advanced computing equipment that blah, 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 blah. I'm a guy who's fairly technical, who has loved this hobby since he was a little boy, who has spent a lot of money on this stuff, and who trusts these. And when I give advice on the channel, all I can really give you is the result of my opinions that are honest, coming from my experience with this. And the best language that I can think of at that time to talk about it seems to work for a lot of people. But I think this distinction about that word was at least worth riffing on for a few minutes. And it's not something I see a lot of other people talking about in that way. So hope that was interesting for a quick talk. Catch you in the next video.